So it's hammer time for the Space Marines? Let's talk about the brutally threatening and very tough Terminator Assault Squad, and why these guys are looking like some of the new hotness for the Space Marines. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Space Marines once more, and this time Terminators. Today we're going to be doing an overview of why the Terminator Assault Squad is quite so strong right now. They just got a bit of a monumental boost in the chapter approved updates. Let's talk through the datasheet and why they came out of the changes particularly well, a little bit of damage output, buffs and synergy, and how I think about using them in game. The Terminator Assault Squad in Warhammer 40k are the iconic firstborn Space Marines clad in tactical dreadnought armour, often teleporting into battle, and the assault version of the unit typically wields either dual lightning claws or thunderhammer and storm shields to rip apart their enemies in close assault like city fights or boarding actions. Would fit in well with Games Workshop's new game mode, I guess. From Games Workshop, their kit's currently £35, €45 or $60, around about 2.8 points per dollar, which isn't terrible as Warhammer 40k goes, though admittedly it's a bit less than it was before, seeing as the unit got cheaper. I'd say as the Space Marine range goes, the Terminator Assault Squad are one of the slightly more old kits at the moment. I think they hold up fairly well, but perhaps fairly simplistic by modern standards, besides their one option really, which is their choice of war gear, either the Thunderhammers and the Storm Shields or the dual Lightning Claws. If you wanted some alternative sculpts, I would bear in mind that there's also a Blood Angels Terminator Assault Squad option. That could be one to look into if you fancied some different options. As always, if you're looking to pick up the kit in the UK, then Element Games has them at a 15% discount, just under £30, so a little bit saved there. I'll leave a link to Element down in the video description, and as always, anything bought through there does help support Auspex Tactics and keep the videos coming at no extra cost to yourselves if you were picking up the kit anyway. Getting into their rules, and the Terminator Assault Squad is a 33 point per model Elite's choice now. You get 5 to 10 models in the unit, they move 5 inches, hit on 3s, a strength and toughness 4, I get a big 3 wounds with a 2+ save, 2 attacks and leadership 8. Each model gets to be equipped either with a pair of lightning claws at strength 4, AP-2 and damage 1, re-rolling wound rolls, and the lightning claw armed ones get an extra couple of attacks as well. It means that each one of those will normally be striking with 5 attacks when you've accounted for shock assault. The ones with the thunder hammers are the ones that I'm particularly interested as per this video. They'll just have the 3 attacks each with shock assault, hitting them at strength 8, AP-2 and a flat damage of 3, though they are -1 to hit. Generally just about everything in the game is going to feel that to some extent. It'll be a bit less effective on hordes though, but I feel like the Thunderhammer version is particularly interesting because of that Storm Shield, an extra +1 to your saves and a 4+ invul, so much more relevant now Armour of Contempt has gone away. It means that you'd be saving AP-1 things on your 2+ still, AP-2 on a 3+, and anything better than that on a 4 even if it's super high AP. Everything gets even better if you can get cover with them. Out of the two, I do think that the Thunderhammer and Storm Shield is drastically better value. They went down in points from 43 to 33. They can tangle with the heaviest things in the game and are also a lot tougher, both of which are great things. Otherwise, for the Terminator Assault Squad, they also get a teleport homer that you can set up somewhere in your deployment zone and jump back to it should you need to. I feel like it's a bit niche that you'd want to, but it's certainly worth doing so just so you have the option if you might want to jump out of a melee or something. Otherwise, in terms of special rules, they have teleport strike so they can deep strike into battle if you'd like, and they're core infantry with the Terminator keyword, which can sometimes be useful. As to why they're so good right now, basically these guys seem to be some of the best beneficiaries of Armour of Contempt going away, and Space Marines getting pretty much a faction-wide points drop. Armour of Contempt leaving means that a lot of other Space Marines across the board are less durable, particularly regular Terminators that don't have the Storm Shields. A 2+ armor save with Armour of Contempt was rather sturdy, even if Space Marines weren't doing amazingly well before these changes. A lot of units in the update kind of got a bit of a side grade, their points going down but also losing durability, so they basically get skewed to be more like damage dealers and less of tanks. But the Thunderhammer and Storm Shield Terminators have just done very well. They didn't get Armour of Contempt because they had Storm Shields, so they've basically lost nothing while also getting a rather big points decrease at the same time, plus a lot of the other Space Marine units are looking far less durable and less good by comparison. It's kind of a bit odd that Thunderhammer and Storm Shield Terminators got such a massive buff like this. Blade Guard are kind of in a similar sort of boat and they didn't change at all, but these guys went down from 43 points to 33 points per model, a whopping 24% points cut, and it wasn't like they were completely unusable at 43. Particularly with a Storm Shield, it now means that their durability for Space Marines is just standout good, And I feel like in an army that's now broadly about making loads of hitting power and not tanking enemy damage quite as well, they're going to be a very interesting unit for Space Marines to put on the table. Perhaps a fairly durable battle line unit to actually receive blows, where most of the army is just good at jumping out with a bunch of melter or plasma or things and blasting things away. Or we'll be expecting to see quite a lot of them hit the table. For certain factions, it gets even better though, say for example the Dark Angels Deathwing Terminator Squad, who generally tend to be the last word in Terminator awesomeness. These guys now feel like a flat upgraded version of the Terminator Assault Squad. You can have every single member take a Thunder Hammer and Storm Shield if you want to. They trade out their Teleport Homer for a Watcher in the Dark for a single Deny the Witch. I feel like that's probably an upgrade or at least a side grade. But then mixed in with the rest of the Terminator squad, you can also choose to take one Terminator with a heavy weapon if you want. So say you could have the majority of the squad with their Thunder Hammers and Storm Shields and have one with a Cyclone missile launcher. That's also completely for free, so you basically got the best of both worlds, a very good fighting melee unit that also just randomly throws out a couple of crack missiles and denies the witch. That really is looking like very efficient stuff for 165 points for 5 of them. Certainly doesn't hurt that the Dark Angels get Inner Circle for basically permanent transhuman physiology, never mind the other Deathwing synergies. Space Wolves can do things pretty similarly as well. They're 34 points per model rather than 33. Again though, they can mix and match with some Assault Terminators plus maybe a Cyclone missile launcher, and the Space Wolves are even more varied in terms of their gear. You could mix things up a bit with combi weapons and things if you wanted, but I do feel that the Storm Shield and Thunder Hammer one is probably going to be one of the best loadouts. For a 5-man squad, you get a pretty decent damage output for that 165 points. These are just the numbers for Thunderhammers versus Lightning Claws, assuming Shock Assault. For the Thunderhammers, you get 16 attacks at Strength 8, AP -2, and Damage 3, all hitting on force, and that's pretty good damage across the board. 7 splattered Guardsmen, 4 or 5 dead standard Space Marines, 3 or 4 Terminators, which they're a lot more efficient against now they don't get Armour of Contempt in return. It has made the Thunderhammers a bit better. 11 wounds to a Toughness 7 vehicle, or around about 5 wounds on average to a Toughness 8 vehicle with a 5+ invul and -1 damage. The Lightning Claws, as you'd expect, do decently better against the Guardsmen, around about double damage, aren't really so far behind on the Space Marines, but they're a lot worse against 3-wound infantry or anything heavier than that. I feel like if they came with the same durability, you could perhaps make edge case arguments for the Lightning Claws, even though I'd still say that the Thunderhammers would be superior. But seeing as they come with the Storm Shields as well, it really becomes an absolute no-brainer. The Thunderhammer and Storm Shield ones are generally just superior. I guess maybe you could make a bit more of an argument for Lightning Claws in White Scars, where they get 2 damage occasionally. As for ways to get a bit more out of the units, there's some very easy buffs that they can access. Assault Doctrine from turn 3 onwards provides you not just sitting in Devastator or something all game. When the hammers get to AP -3, they're going to be a lot more effective against 2+ save targets. I would say that it's perhaps a bit less of a big deal than it was though. Now half the armies of the game don't have Armour of Contempt on the go. For stratagems out of the core book, they're perhaps a little bit more limited. Easily the best one I'd say is perhaps Fury of the First. 1 CP for a +1 to hit in combat, very relevant when you're hitting on 4s anyway. Going to be a flat 33% increase to the damage output. If you need every pip of damage output, then that one could easily be worth it, even on 5-man units. It is kind of interesting though that the -1 to hit on the Thunderhammers is kind of a strength as well as a weakness. It means they won't care about hitting things with -1 modifiers, they'll still be hitting on 4s regardless. Moving on to character buffs, and they are a very easy unit to support I think. Perhaps out of any of the things that the Space Marines can give them, then the Rights of War Warlord trait does seem like quite a good one. You can make them objective secured, and give perhaps one of the most durable Space Marine units the ability to wrest objectives away from the foe. Otherwise, of course, any rerolls that you can give them will be nice. Any Chapter Master rerolls in particular with that 4+ to hit, or the same with the Chaplain reroll hits in melee. Other Chaplain buffs could potentially be the 5+ save against mortal wounds. That will be one of the more efficient ways to kill them. And the +2 inches to charge litany can be quite nice as well, both if you're deep striking or just want a little bit more threat range on the board. Finally, I'd say maybe the other highest value unit to buff them with might be the Apothecary, healing models and reviving them from the dead. Potentially you could put them towards the front of a unit and make your charge shorter when you heal them. Otherwise though, the individual chapters can do a whole load for the Terminator Assault Squad, and as a big threatening core infantry unit that's worth putting buffs on, literally every single chapter in the game has some very good synergies with them, though maybe here are just a few of the more standout choices. I think I would argue that Dark Angels are pretty much the best place to run Thunderhammer Terminators. They've just got a ridiculous amount of good stuff, basically transhuman physiology from Inner Circle all game long. They basically always get +1 to hit in the enemy's turn with their raw chapter tactic. The Deathwing doctrine makes them a bit better at fighting certain targets like big vehicles and things. They've got a Pennant of Remembrance for a -1 damage from an Ancient, Ezekiel for 4 rerolls to hit and wound, same for Azrael, who can give them other things too. Belial can also hand out rerolls. They've got great stratagems in melee, access to a fast apothecary to get that healing where it needs to be, the unique datasheet with the missiles and the Watcher in the Dark, and if you do commit to an entire Deathwing Arcs of Omen detachment or regular detachment, then you can get their first company bonus and make them all objective secured completely innately. Dark Angels do just have a ridiculous amount of good stuff going for them. I feel like you could very easily just pick up, say, around about 30 Terminators, mainly with Thunderhammers and Storm Shields, and that would be a very big threatening chunk of your army that your opponent would struggle to deal with. Overall, I think it's quite easy to argue that they're probably best, but a whole load of the other chapters do bring their own powerful tools to the table. Black Templars, I think, are also quite standout. A couple of different Feel No Pain type sources, including their unique litany, the Relic Bearers that you can get in their units to make one model exceptionally tough, a bit of mortal wound protection innately, and also the early Assault Doctrine option from the Crusader Helm, that doesn't hurt either. Space Wolves we already mentioned briefly, again a unique datasheet, loads of melee cylinders, and their own unique assault doctrine, and heroic intervention as well. I'd say the Blood Angels are also in a fairly good place as well. Having an extra +1 to wound and a bonus getting into combat doesn't hurt. Successor chapters of the more shooty ones could get Whirlwind of Rage and +1 to hit from Born Heroes. White Scars can advance and charge for a much bigger threat range, plus potentially get damage for hammers later on in the game. Deathwatch again have their own unique datasheet, so can mix in with a bit of shooting, plus a Feel No Pain type spell, and potentially Assault Doctrine as early as you want it with their combat doctrines. And Salamanders work well enough as well with their +1 to wound stratagem, plus psychic powers to make the unit tough, and some really good support stratagems such as countercharging the enemy, or tanking damage for powerful damage dealers behind them. Overall, plenty of the chapters have their own special things, but I feel that their raw datasheet is strong enough to be justifiable in any of them. For a rough plan for using them in game, you'd have to weigh up between the options of starting on the board versus deep strike. In general, most people tend to start most of their units on the board in 40k these days, get them in range of countercharging things on critical midfield objectives early on. Maybe a unit in Deep Strike Reserve isn't the worst though, particularly not if you've got something like a Chaplain with a +2 to charge, so you actually have a fairly decent chance of jumping down and charging forward to hit the enemy. In terms of squad numbers, I feel like you can be pretty flexible with them. Even a couple of small units of 5 are a big enough threat to be worth including, I think, or you could go ridiculously heavy on them, a couple of big units supported by characters. The more that you have, and the more clusters up they are in big units, perhaps the more justifiable it is to invest in character buffs specifically for them. In terms of that support, we did already go through it a bit. My top picks will probably be Rites of War on some character. A Chaplain does seem pretty excellent for the rerolls, probably upgraded to Master of Sanctity for more litanies and reliability. And for certain armors, an Apothecary is really quite nice, particularly if they've gotten a unique one, or they can do something special like Black Templars reviving their Relic Bearers to basically have that durability upgrade all over again. As for a rough battle plan, in general I'd usually want to start them on the board, deploy fairly far forward as they've only got a 5-inch move, but balance that with whatever threats the opponent can bring turn 1. You don't really want them just being the only thing that's exposed and then bear the brunt of the entire enemy army's firepower. It's usually a bit of a trade-off between getting in threatening positions and being exposed to enemy damage. I feel like light cover in particular is really big for the Assault Terminators. They'll get to save even AP-3 things on a 3+ if you're in light cover, so even just nosing 1 or 2 Terminators into there if you can while you're advancing up the board would be a pretty awesome idea if you could. Each time they move, they generally want to be advancing if they're not planning to charge, unless you're playing Dark Angels with the Cyclone missile launchers or anything. You've got no shooting to hold you back, so you get the extra movement each turn for no real cost. And in general, I think they want to be at least fairly aggressive, pushing towards those midfield objectives, and being one of the units that the enemy actually is encouraged to shoot, rather than the other more fragile but dangerous Space Marines with multi-melters or whatever. It would probably be worth putting that Teleport Homer sometime in your deployment zone, maybe on a home field objective perhaps. You could maybe use it to escape from the enemy if you're in a combat that you know that you're going to lose. In general, I feel like it's not going to be the most important things, at least in most games. As for weaknesses, I feel like they're a very strong unit overall, but they do have their drawbacks. They're certainly pretty slow with only a 5-inch move. It's sort of hard to guarantee that they're going to get the charge rather than be charged. Then that durability would have to come into good effect. They're not going to be quite as efficient against hordes as a fair few other things in 40k, though they're not utterly worthless. And in terms of damage profiles to kill them, anything with a reasonable amount of AP and damage 3 will go through them at least fairly quickly. Those type of guns aren't as common as they used to be in Warhammer 40k, but as Space Marines go, I feel like these guys are now some of the toughest for the cost. Overall, I feel like these guys are in a really good place to be a very solid unit going forward. I suspect at least a fair few Space Marine players who own them will be putting them on the tabletop. Let me know your thoughts and any other ideas that you might have for using them. Always keen to hear some alternate takes. And if you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, or I'll certainly keep the regular 40k things coming. I'll link another Space Marine review video down in the video description. I've done a rather similar overview for the rather murderous Plasma Inceptors a little while back. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked down in the video description below. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, an absolutely massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.